Okay, we'll let everybody get connected to the audio. I think we're waiting on. There we go. Hello, friends. While you guys get settled, I will do some quick introductions. My name is Alish, and I am the Blue STEM Publicity Co-Chair, so I get to do all these super fun author chats with all of you. With us today, we have Christine, our Blue STEM Chair, as well as a representative from ISLE who's handling the Zoom management. And we have our author of Caves, Nell Beckerman, who we are so excited to have.
Yay, me too.
So we are going to let Ms. Beckerman do a little introduction and talk about her books a little bit, and then we will have time for questions. We're just going to ask, because of time constraints, that when we're doing questions, please have your students like up by the camera prepared with their question when I call on your class so that we don't have to wait for you to pick somebody and have them come up, and takes up a little bit of time that way. Okay? So we will take it away with Miss Beckerman.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Now, I have a question for everyone watching. Is anyone here a kid? Raise your hand if you're a kid. Are you a kid? Okay, great, great. So we have something in common because I used to be a kid. So I was wondering, would you like to see some of the things I did when I was a kid? And you can raise your hand. Hi, everyone. And tell me if this is anything you've done as a current kid, okay? So I'm gonna show you some of the things I've done. So this is me flying a kite. Does anyone still do kids still fly kites? Raise your hand if you have flown a kite, yeah? Yes, okay, good. This is me when I'm little in a cave. This is my big question. Has anyone here been in a cave? Raise your hand if you've been in a cave. I'm not, okay, I see some. Okay, a few, okay, good. And then this is me at an aquarium. I used to like to touch things at an aquarium. Do you guys go to aquariums? Yeah? Yes? Okay, yes. And then this is me. So I was an only child. I have no brothers and sisters. My parents were divorced. I'd spend the weeks with my mom, the librarian, and I'd spend my weekends with my dad, who's a scientist. And I had a lot of free time and I would read. So I like to read books. Does anyone here like to read books? Yes? Yes? Or do you like to hear other people read to you? That also counts. Or audiobooks. So those are all things I like to do as a kid. And I'm glad to see that some people still do that kind of stuff. I like to do stuff outside. And I think that helped me become an adult who liked to write books about doing things outside. So these are some of the books I've written. Caves is about amazing caves all over the world. I hope you all have read it and know about that. Down Under the Pier is about the intertidal zone, all the amazing animals you can find under the pier at low tide. When the Sky Glows, about all the amazing ways nature can make the sky glow, from sunrise to sunsets to rainbows to solar eclipse to auroras. Has anyone seen auroras in the past year? I have some friends in Illinois who saw auroras, and I was very jealous. So that's in When the Sky Glows. And From Park to Playa is about how our trails and our parks bring us all together and how nature is everywhere. So that's just a little bit about me and my books.
Okay, thank you so much. So, my friends, we are going to get to ask questions now. So, I am going to go across my screen in the order that your classes are showing up for me. So, if I say your name wrong, teachers, please let me know so that I can say it right, because otherwise I'm just guessing. We will start with a question from Miss Rudolph's class, and then we will do Sowelke, Hooverwood, Edson, and the first name on the last one for me is Sandra, but I don't have your last name up and I can't remember what it is from your email. So I will check that, but that's the order we'll go in. So we'll start with Miss Rudolph's class.
Okay. Yeah, I want you to go to the camera.
Hello, thank you for having us today. So we're so excited to meet you. Okay, this is my friend Danica, and here's her question. You can ask whatever question.
Hi, Jenica.
What
Lean
is
down.
what is your favorite cave to explore?
What is my favorite cave to explore? Wow, that's such a great question. Well, Jenica, have you ever been in a cave? I'm just curious.
Yes, I have been to
What's your favorite cave you've explored?
Mammoth Cave.
You've been to Mammoth Cave? Can you
Yes.
tell us something about Mammoth Cave that was really cool?
I liked that they told these stories. And I also liked I think it was the Dead Man's Calf where you had to fit in the tight gaps.
Oh, that sounds so you were a real spelunker. That's one of the words I loved getting to use in caves is spelunking is a fancy word for caving. And some of people think of spelunking as you have to like get in a really tight hole like that. I have not done that level of spelunking. I like show caves, which Mammoth Cave is a show cave. It's a huge, it's one of is it the biggest cave in the United States? It's in Kentucky, right? And it goes on forever and ever and ever. I have not seen this cave. I would love to see this cave. Were there lots of stalactites and stalagmites in Mammoth Cave?
Yeah.
Yes, and so that's one of the things I love seeing in caves is stalactites and stalagmites. So, you know, those are the rock I call them rock icicles. They look like stone icicles coming down, and they're made from over thousands of years. And so stalactites come from the ceiling, and stalagmites come from the ground. And I just think it's so magical to see that kind of those kind of rock formations. I think my favorite cave that I've been in personally was actually, it's called a wild cave. So it's not a show cave. It's a cave I got to do a little hike to. And it was one of my favorite ones because I could go swimming in it. And that was so exciting. And the water was so cold that I kind of couldn't talk. But I was so excited by my surroundings. I was like, I'm in a cave. I'm swimming in the cave. I'm swimming in the cave. So I think just like the sensory part of being in a cave where it's dark and mysterious and spooky on top of being in freezing cold water is an experience I will never forget. So it was called Coyote Cave. It's in Northern California.
Oh, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, but I mean, Kentucky Mammoth Cave, that's on my bucket list. I would love to go there sometime for sure. Thank you so much for that question.
Yes, thank you for letting me meet you.
Excellent job, friend. So then we will go to Miss Soelke's class.
Why did you choose to be an author?
Why did I choose to be an author? That is a great question. I have a question for you. Do you like writing?
Yes.
Do you like making up stories?
Kind of.
Kind of. Do you like reading?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I was pretty similar to you. I liked reading a lot when I was a kid. I didn't do a lot of writing. Like when I got assigned creative writing in class, I liked doing that, but it wasn't like I did that on my free time. But I loved reading. I loved reading so much. My favorite book when I was about your age was The Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil Frankweiler. Has anyone heard of that book? It's a book about a kid and her brother who decide to run away and go live in a museum in New York. And I thought that sounded like a great adventure. And so I really wanted to have a lot of adventures in my life. That's what reading that book told me about myself. You know, sometimes reading books can help you learn about who you are because it helps you figure out what you like which books are you drawn to, what topics are you drawn to. So what I realized because I love that book about the kids that go live as stowaways in an art museum was that I love the idea of travel and adventure. And so I did a lot of that. I didn't study writing in school. I studied art history and French. And I went to go live in France for a year studying art. Maybe it was because of that book about the kids who lived in a museum. I'm not sure. But I always realized I liked writing to kind of figure out my own journaling. And I don't know, I ended up becoming a TV producer because I like telling stories. And I became an author because I stopped being a TV producer and I stayed home with my kids and I would read them a lot of books and they loved these books. And it reminded me of how much I love reading. And I started to wonder, could I write a book that my kids would love as much as these others? They like Junie B. Jones and all those kinds of books. And so that's what I tried to do. I tried to write a chapter book, but then I took a class about picture books, and that's what really connected for me. And I got a group of other friends. We have a writing group, and we all help each other because trying to become an author by yourself is almost impossible. You need help. You need the support of friends, and you need feedback. You need other people to read your stories and say, hey, this part I love, this part was confusing. You know, when you write, you have to revise a lot, and it's hard to know what to revise unless other people are reading your stories and telling you what needs to keep on being revised. So in school, maybe that's a teacher who's telling you what needs to be revised, or maybe you work in small groups with friends and your friends tell you what needs to be revised. But that's the same as me as an author. So that's my long winding story of how I became an author. I just always followed my interests, and it has led me to writing books about nature. Thank you for that question.
Wonderful. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty with our other host, so I will be taking over.
Okay.
So next we will have Hoover Wood. If you can have your student ask a question.
Go ahead, go on. What's your favorite book you've written?
And what's your name?
Signy?
Sydney. I like your hat.
Thank you.
What's my favorite book I've written? Okay, well, first I want to ask you, what's your favorite book you've read?
I don't
Do you
know.
have, you might have a few favorites, but what's one of the favorites?
Uh,
I put you on the spot. Do you like graphic novels? My kids love graphic novels.
I like historical fiction.
You like historical fiction. Do you like those history smasher books or,
Kind of.
yeah.
I like a lot of books that talk about like wars.
Yeah, that's really interesting topic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite book that I have written, gosh. Well, you know, the first book I wrote.
Some reason the message is not going through out in email, it is outdoor recess. Outdoor recess today.
You guys. Yeah.
So one of my favorite books is From Park to Playa. It came out in May, and I like this book because this is about where I live. So this is actually a hiking trail in Los Angeles, and I put in lots of details that luckily the illustrator, her name is Sophie Diao, she put in the illustration. The illustrators don't always put everything you write about in the illustration, so that's always a little tricky. But this is a view from where I live that it's really fun for me to see. There's a rainbow here. This is a little background, back behind the scenes info. This rainbow is in the Sony Picture Studios movie lot, which is where I live. And they built this rainbow because The Wizard of Oz was filmed there. So they built it to kind of commemorate that The Wizard of Oz is there. So I could see a rainbow every day. It's always there. It's 94 feet high. And this is a train in Los Angeles called the Expo Line. So that's really fun. There's a lot of personal details in Park to Playa. And I also love When the Sky Glows. This is actually the Italian version of When the Sky Glows. I don't have the English one handy. But I love this one because the illustrator is David Litchfield. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He wrote a book called The Bear and the Piano that won a lot of awards. But I got to go actually meet David in England where he lives and spend the day learning about how he makes his amazing illustrations. So I love this book because it has these really epic, colorful illustrations of all the ways the sky can glow. Did you guys see the solar eclipse last spring?
Yeah.
Were you in the zone of totality? I love this illustration too. So that's something I love about that. I have to say, I mean, caves is very close to my heart. because it has connected with so many schools and kids around the country, and it's allowed me to meet so many new people. So I've loved that. Sorry, I have a little cold. But I don't know if you. This is my newest book, so it's also very close to my heart, and it's a follow-up to caves. I don't know if you guys are interested in volcanoes, but I think the illustrator, Kaylin Chalk, did such a cool job illustrating lava. I don't know if you can see, but it like glows off the page. So this is the follow-up to caves. And actually in the fall, we're going to have a third one called forests. So look out for that. So I don't know. I can't really pick a favorite. I have reasons I love all of them.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking that question.
All right, Miss Edson's class.
So can you wait, what? Can you get stuck in like the glowworm silk if like it touches you?
That's such an interesting question because another student asked me this recently. Is that something you feel like you might be worried about if you went to the glowworm grotto, that you might personally get stuck in the strings?
No.
No. Yeah, I'm curious as to why this question has come up a lot recently. I don't think so. I mean, these glowworms, so they're actually not worms, they're fly larvae. And I'm curious, do you all know what it's called when animals or plants can glow on their own? They don't need like a battery or get plugged in. Does anyone know what that word is if something can glow on its own?
It's called bioluminescence.
That's right. I love that. Sorry. Yeah, that word, I love that word, bioluminescence. Yeah, so these glowworms have bioluminescence. So they flash to attract prey, and they send down these sticky strings to also catch the prey. I'm trying to find the illustration of that in the book. Here it is. But they're so little, and they're catching tiny little flies. And we're so big that I don't think that there's any kind of danger of humans getting stuck in them. I'm trying to find, I have a photo of the actual glowworms too. But yeah, I haven't even heard anyone saying that they felt the glowworms, because this is a public cave that anyone can go to. If you can go to New Zealand, you can go see these glowworms. Sorry. So this is what it looks like. And it doesn't seem like these people in the boat are being hit in the face with any sticky strings, as far as I can tell. So yeah, it seems like a very magical experience. I don't know as a fact that people don't get stuck in them, but I've not heard that in any of my research.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have Miss Sandra's class. Or
Have you ever seen crystals in a cave?
Ooh, do you like crystals?
Yeah.
I love crystals. I actually have crystals all over my office because I love crystals. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to include the Cueva de los Cristales, the crystal cave in Mexico. So this was discovered because some brothers who worked for a mining company in Mexico, they were trying to find stuff that the mining company might want to get out and sell. And they discovered the Cueva de los Cristales. It was filled with warm, mineral-rich water that the mining company pumped out, and they found these enormous 39-foot selenite crystals. So scientists went in and studied them. It was so hot that they could only go in for about 10 minutes. They had to wear these little they had to wear these heat suits to protect them from the heat. But they decided that, you know, the scientists did their studies. The mining company decided that they, you know, were not going to take out these crystals. So right now that the cave has been refilled with the water. I did not get to go to any cave that was anything close to that. It sounds like a absolute fantasy dream to go into a cave filled with giant crystals that you can walk around. I'm trying to find the photo of the actual cave. Here it is. So I discovered this cave in this book by National Geographic called Rarely Seen: Photographs of the Extraordinary. And that's one way I do research. After I have an idea, you know, I'll know of things that I've seen on my own, but then sometimes I like to just go look for cool photos that catch my interest. Because then I think, oh, well, maybe that will also catch the interest of you guys, of kids, because you're my audience. And so this one in this book, this is the photo of the real cave, and I couldn't believe it. It really sparked my imagination of what it would be like to walk around such giant crystals. But I did not go there, and I've also not seen smaller crystals in caves, personally. Maybe other people have, but I have not. So that is the story behind the Crystal Cave in Mexico.
Next person.
Excellent. We have time for one question from each class. So we'll start back at Miss Rudolph's class.
Okay, Colin, you can ask.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead and ask. Yeah, share a story. You have to ask a question. Okay, look in the camera.
So, what were the steps for making your book?
What are the steps of making my book? Is that what the question is?
Yes.
That's a really good question. The steps are different for the books. Sometimes I'll get an idea completely out of the blue. Usually I don't get my ideas when I sit down and say, okay, Nell, time to write a book. That isn't how it works for me. I'll be out on a hike, I'll be taking a shower, I'll be watching TV. One time I got an idea for a book while I was on a plane, and I was watching little documentaries on the seat back entertainment. And one of the documentaries, I was like, this is a great idea for a book. So then sometimes I'll hear the very first lines of the book right away. So in the case of caves, I'll tell you what the steps were for that. So I was actually at a family reunion in Florida. My family gets together at a place called Alligator Point in Florida. So this is my family at our big reunion. And I was sitting on this screened porch wondering what we should do. And I was looking on my phone. I was like, oh, I see that there's some caves about 2 hours away. I wonder if my kids would like to go there. And I realized my kids had never been in a cave. And for whatever reason, right then, all my memories of going to caves came rushing at me all at once. And I wrote the first draft of Caves right then on my notes app of my phone. And this is it. So I called it The Secrets of the Caves. It had a different title. And it says, in the dark of the woods is a rock with a hole, a big hole, a deep hole that goes back into the mountain. Well, just for a little comparison, I'll read you how the end result was. In the shade of the woods is a hill with a hole, beaconing black, goosebump chills, excitement and fear battle. Which will win? You want to go in. So it's the same idea, but you can tell I've done a lot of revisions to make it more dramatic and fun. But so that was my first step for this book, is I was just trying to capture the mood and the feeling. And so then after that, so the next step after I did that was I wrote out the manuscript. And I also, these are some of the tools I use in my creative process. So I often use a thesaurus. So who knows what a thesaurus is? Have you guys heard of that? Raise your hand. Yeah, it's a magical either website or book you give it a word you're using, and it gives you lots of other choices of fun words. So like if I'm writing about volcanoes and I'm writing about lava, okay, well, lava's hot. But if I kept saying lava's hot and this volcano's hot, well, that's not going to be that interesting. But if I use a thesaurus, it gives me words like blazing, scorching, sizzling, sultry, sweltering. So I have so many choices for cool words. So that's a step, is I always use the thesaurus. These are chunks of lava that I also had in my office. So sometimes I'll have sensory objects to just help me feel creative. And then this is a picture of a Zoom with my writing group that I mentioned before. So after I write the story, then I share it with my writing group and everyone tells me their thoughts on it. So that's another step, is getting the feedback and then revising and revising and revising. And then I also do research. And so for caves, I read a lot of books, because you have to be very careful about where you get your facts from. If you look online, well, some of the sources online, the facts are not true. They're not accurate. So I use books, I use certain websites. Your librarians and teachers can help you figure out what websites are good for you to do research. And then I also watch documentaries. I was watching a documentary about the Rising Star cave system, where 6 women helped excavate full skeletons of the Homo naledi. And so then I approached this woman to interview. I interviewed her on my own. And then also I have my dad help me, because he's a scientist. So that's also a step, as I asked my dad lots of questions. And then I try to sell the story, which when I do my full school visit, I go through all the rejections I get, but Scholastic said yes. And so then the next step is it goes to illustration. And the illustrator of this book actually worked on the Wild Robot movie. Here's him at the Wild Robot premiere. And then the book gets printed and it goes out to all the stores. So that's a very quick idea of all the steps involved in writing a book.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for your question.
All right, Miss Solke's class. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name.
Can you tell us more about your next book?
Oh, I'd love to. I've got 2 books coming up. The next book is going to be the 3rd in the series of caves, volcanoes, and then right now, Kaylin, the illustrator, he's illustrating the 3rd one is going to be forests. And that's going to come out next fall. And it's going to be about forests you expect, cool redwood forests and such like that. But it's also going to be about forests you might not know about. Like, has anyone heard of the crooked forest in Poland? Raise your hand. You've heard of that? Oh, I was hoping no one would raise their hand. But so there's a forest in Poland where for some reason, a lot of the trees are bent like the shape of a C. And they know that humans did this, but they don't know why. Because this forest existed during World War II and this town was decimated. So no one is still alive from that time. So that's one of the forests included in Forest next fall. And I hope you all go and read it. My other book that's going to come out, it hasn't yet been announced, but it's about urban coyotes. So I'm doing a lot of research about urban coyotes. Do you all have coyotes in Illinois? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about coyotes, is they're in all the states now. They're everywhere. So it's been a really interesting topic to research.
All right, we have Hoover Woods class.
When did you start exploring caves?
When did I start exploring caves? Have you been in a cave? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Was it in Illinois? Is it where you live, or was it somewhere else?
It's really nearby. It's not a big one.
Okay. Did it have stalactites and stalagmites, or it's just like a
It's
rock
just
cave?
one of those arch caves.
Oh, cool. That's so cool. Well, if you read caves, you will see a picture of me in the back when I'm a very little girl with my dad. And so I'm going to say that was the first cave I went to. It's kind of like what you're describing. It's just kind of a rock cave. It was in the desert in San Diego. So if you read an author's note for me, and it talks about that a little bit. And this is me during my honeymoon. I went to a lava tube cave in Hawaii. I'm actually just pretending to be very adventurous there. I didn't need to be crawling around, but I thought it'd make a better photo if I did, because the lava tube caves are very tall. So yeah, I went to one when I was probably preschool age with my dad there. And he was a naturalist, he's a biologist, so he was always taking me out to go do stuff in nature. So we went to lots of other caves too. Thanks for your question.
All right, Miss Edson's class. Oh, if you could unmute.
Sorry. Why do bats live in caves?
Why do bats live in caves? So you're asking this because about the bat cave in the book?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked that question, because next month I'm actually going to Texas, and my plan is to go to Bracken Cave, which is in the book, where they have lots of scientists who study bat conservation. And I'm going to ask them that question, because that is not a question answered in the book. And I understand why you're asking that. Why do bats live in caves? I don't know. I was more focused on that there were 20 million of them in that cave, which I thought was very amazing. Let's see the pictures for that one. Sorry about my cough. So in Bracken Cave, there's 20 million bats that roost there in the summer. And that's not only such a big number of bats, it's actually the biggest number of mammals in the world, is 20 million in Bracken Cave. Here we go. So here's Bracken Cave. This is what it looks like in the book Caves. This is how Kaylin illustrated it. And can you imagine going to see these bats come out of their cave at dusk? I couldn't believe it. And, you know, a lot of people think that we should be afraid of bats because they're gonna bite us. But as I hope a lot of you know, bats actually don't drink blood. Like, very few bats feed off animals. And if they do, it's normally cows. All these bats eat fruit, and they also eat mosquitoes and flies. So bats actually help us. And the reason in the book it says stop, do not enter is not really because the bats are going to be dangerous to you, but it's like you might be dangerous to the bats. Bats suffer from something called white nose syndrome, and a lot of bats are dying from that. And that turned out to be something that humans can pass on to them, even though it isn't something we get. They get diseases from humans. So bat conservationists are trying to protect bats, because bats do a lot for our environment. And I was curious, like, what does 20 million bats all sleeping together look like? So I found this little video. I don't know if it's a PDF, so it's not going to play. But here's a little picture of all of them sleeping together in their little bat slumber party. But I'm going to ask the bat conservationists, why in particular, why do you think they sleep in a cave?
Maybe because they don't want to be by people.
Maybe because they don't want to be by people. That's a really great answer. I bet that's one of the reasons. I'm going to guess that the environment is one that they need, probably having it be dark and quiet and cold. I'm going to guess that that's part of it too. But you could ask your teacher or librarian for how to research about bats, and they're going to help you answer that question. And maybe you guys can email me and tell me why they choose caves as their habitat. I'd like to know.
I might try researching on them.
Good. I'm glad to hear you say that. Maybe you can write a story about bats after you research them too.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And lastly, we have Miss Sandra's class.
What does it feel like to write books that get published?
Oh, I love that question. It feels amazing. Do you have are you inspired to try to write a book that gets published? Is that something you'd like to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that when I was your age, I did not think was possible for that someone like me could do. I was like, I'm just a regular person. How would I make that happen? And the way that I became a published author was really by forming a good group of friends who all had the same goal as me. And we all have helped each other figure out how to do that. And it's a lot of work, you know, it's even after you sell your story, it takes years for it to come out. So, sorry. It's a very long process that requires a lot of patience and perseverance. And maybe you remember I showed you a screenshot of all the rejections I get all the time, of even when the story seems like it's a good story, a lot of publishers say, we don't want to make this into a book. Luckily, each time one publisher said, yes, we want to make this into a book. So it's very exciting to see a story you come up with become an actual book. To have kids like you all read these books and like them is an amazing feeling. I love going to schools and meeting all of you and hearing your own experiences and what books you like to read and what subjects you're interested in. It's having all those connections that's what's really fun. And I'm such a fan of all the illustrators I work with. So I love seeing the artwork that they come up with based on these stories. So I feel very lucky that I get to do this. And I hope everyone who's interested in becoming an author, I hope you try and do it, because that's the only way to make it happen, is to actually try and learn about it. So I encourage everyone who's interested to try to do that.
Thanks.
All right, friends, that's all the time that we have today. I want to thank Nell Beckerman for taking the time to talk to our readers and all of the students who asked such great questions. Teachers, if you would like to unmute so your students can say goodbye, and thank you so much for being here, and have a wonderful day.
Bye. Thank you so much. Can everyone, I'm going to take a screenshot of everyone. Can everyone say bye? Great. I got it. I'll send it to you.